evening, everyone, and welcome to the Benjamin Branch Library. We're excited to host this evening Laura and Arthur. To give you a little bit more of a background on them, I'm going to introduce Beth Sheffield, who's going to give us a little more information about their background.
Hi everyone. We are so honored to have Laura Carney here for her residency. She is our One City, One Book author, and My Father's List is what we want our entire community to read this fall. And if any of you have read chapter 5,
best chapter in the book.
Best chapter in the book.
You don't need to read any other part, or the index.
You know that Laura and her husband Stephen had the opportunity to meet Arthur Milnes at near the Carter Center, or near Plains, Georgia, and so we're very honored to have the first international author come to One City, One Book. It was, I think you were 8 years old when you wrote the letter to the Queen, is that right?
Yep.
And started his letter writing career at 8 years old with a letter to Queen Elizabeth II, and she wrote back.
Yep.
So Arthur Milnes is a journalist, a public historian, past speechwriter for the Prime Minister of Canada. His 15 books include studies on Canadian leaders and also our U.S. presidents, George H.W. Bush, Jimmy Carter, Franklin Roosevelt. Mr. President and Mrs. Carter actually have stayed at his home, and along with the Secret Service in 2012. That's an experience that you won't soon forget. And he's been the memoirs assistant to the Right Honorable Brian Mulroney, Canada's 18th Prime Minister. And he also spent 2 hours with Margaret Thatcher, and we'd love to hear more of regale us with his stories about everything that Arthur has done. And many of you know that this is Laura Carney, who is a writer and copy editor who hails from New Jersey. She is been an editor for 20 years for such magazines as Good Housekeeping, People, and GQ. In 2023, she published the memoir, My Father's List, how living my father's dreams set me free, and has been featured on CBS Sunday Morning, NPR, NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt, and covered by the Washington Post, ARP. My Father's List was named one of the best books of 2023 by Real Simple magazine. She is also the co-founder of something on an app called Modern Prairie in the Pioneer Project with Do the Thing founder Stacey Lauren. This Modern Prairie is Melissa Gilbert's brand that was founded by her and Natalie Haas. Nicole Haas. A brand about for women over a certain age that to commune together. It's a wonderful app, and we're very honored to have everyone here tonight, and thank you all for coming.
Bridget, did you have questions for us, or should we just get started?
You jump right in.
Well, you know what, I kind of would love to hear, since I wrote about it in this book that I've been so fortunate to get to share with all of you this past, what has it been, 8 days now, Stephen? This is my husband, Stephen Sigmund, in the front row, whose bio is extensive, but we might not be hearing it tonight, maybe later. But and I also do want to make sure I thank Beth for this incredible opportunity, because what a cool thing this has been to get to share my story in so many different ways, at so many different events. But since I'm the one who wrote about it, I think it might be nice to hear Art's version of how he and Stephen and I met that fateful night in Plains, Georgia. In 2017, August 2017.
It was, wasn't it? Yeah. So, well, first off, Beth, thanks for that introduction. My dad would have really liked that, but my mom would have believed it. I was thinking if we stop now, everything's good, and if I get out of here now, you guys will love me. Before I answer Laura's question, I wanted to give you guys some advice if you ever come to visit us in Canada. Just some cultural things that'll help you out. First off, you could, I guess down here you could tell it too. If you're in a Walmart and there's a huge lineup at one of the takeouts or the checkouts, and next to it is an empty one, that'll be the Canadians in the lineup. We go for lineups, right? So it's unbelievable. And if you're in one of our shopping malls and you step on a Canadian's foot, they'll apologize to you. Right? So those are a few, just little cultural things that might help you out if you come and see us. Your dollar's at about 45%. So I encourage you to come and visit us right now. So those, like I said, that'll help you out if you're having some cultural difficulties while you visit. How did I meet you guys? Wow.
Yeah. Oh, and give them a little bit of a history
Yeah.
of the 150.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So my poor wife Allison's here, my long-suffering wife. And my favorite story actually is it was mentioned that President and Mrs. Carter slept at our house in Kingston, Ontario. That was in 2012. They came to the university in our town, Queen's University. They accepted honorary degrees. So by that point, I had known President Carter for a number of years. So I just phoned him and said, why don't you stay with us? And he said, thank God. Right? Right. So I said, well, before you agree, Mr. President, there's some rules, right? If you're going to stay in my house. And he said, what's that, Arthur? And I said, well, there's a dress code. And he said, oh, that's interesting. And I said, jeans. If you bring a suit, I'm throwing you out. No jeans. And he said he likes that. And then I said, dinner will be, they were arriving about 11 in the morning or so. And dinner will be at 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 7 o'clock, or no dinner. We don't care, right? So he really liked that. The thing he really liked most was I said, well, Mr. President, there will be no mucky mucks from the university within a kilometer of my house the entire time you're there. So he quite appreciated not being on display. But a picture, then your wife gets home from work. And I said, Allison, I have great news. Allison knew the Carters quite well as well. I said, I have great news. President and Mrs. Carter are coming to Kingston. And she said, oh, that's great. Hopefully we'll get to see them. We'll get to see them. And then she started to walk up the stairs. She's been married to me like more than 20 years by this point. And she stopped and she turned. And she said, you better not have asked them to stay with us. And I said, well, it came up. So I often get asked by my friend, people always say, wow, how do you get ready for a president sleeping in your house, right? Well, you fight in your couple, and then you fight about cleaning, and then you clean, and then you clean again. And that went on for about 2 months, I think. And then finally the Carters arrived, and there it was. So anyway, so thanks for welcoming us to North Carolina. So I've never been, so it's quite a thrill. So.
Have you ever been introduced with that as part of the bio?
What, the sleepover?
Jimmy Carter slept at your
No,
house?
I never have. So that maybe you guys give me some real stature. I'll come back. I'll cancel all your events and I'll do them. Right? I just
use the help.
Yeah, I just want that intro each time. Right? So I would go see President and Mrs. Carter a couple times a year, starting about I can't remember now, 2001 or something like that. And what happened was, he became my hero when I was basically grade 8 or something. He was still in the White House. And my mother never talked politics, with one exception, which was Jimmy Carter. And Mom always said Jimmy Carter's a good and decent man. But then the thing she added that obviously really hit home with me was that it was the only time in the Cold War she felt safe was with Jimmy Carter in the White House. And that obviously really, stuck with me. So the first thing I did was write him a letter when I was in high school. He was a former president at this point. And I got a handwritten note back. And I'm like, wow, okay, So as they say, I was led to write on. But then I became a journalist, and I kept trying to get interviews with him, and I was always turned down. And then one Sunday, gets us to Laura and Stephen. One Sunday I was reading in the New York Times that he taught Sunday school in Little Plains, Georgia. Population 637, and every year, whenever you would say that, he once phoned me and said, "You're incorrect." I wrote something in the newspaper, and he said, "You're wrong. I put 627 people." And he phoned and said, "There's 626. There's been a death." And she phoned me to correct me. Oh yeah, it was quite a details.
Yeah,
Quite a details man. Oh, it totally.
Detail oriented to be precedent
No,
sometimes.
yeah, that's what they said.
Because
Yeah.
he read everything that crossed his desk.
Totally,
But
yeah.
stops here.
And he also would correct your letter.
Oh,
Oh yeah, yeah. It was interesting. You would write to him, and he would. They would photocopy your letter, and
Yes.
then the original would go into the archives, and then he would write on your letter.
Oh, he just wrote in the margin on mine.
Yeah, but did he correct anything?
No.
You're a better writer than me.
I'm a copy editor.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I was corrected a few times. You get these letters back with,
Wait,
red.
now I feel really proud.
Oh, you should. He didn't understand Canadianisms, and so he would underline. We would spell honor O-U-R, and he didn't like that. And stuff. But anyway.
Really?
Yeah.
How funny.
So I read this article, and it said that he would do this Sunday school, but then meet everybody after. And I'm like, wow, I can meet my hero. So 45 minutes later, I had a return ticket to Atlanta, and my wife quite wisely said, I'm not going. And down I went, and I got to meet my hero. And I had all these plans of what I would say to him if I ever met him. And I didn't say anything. I was just like, wow, or something like that. So, but I was smart enough as a journalist to take the lay of the land, and I realized the best way to approach President Carter was through the Plains community, not through the Carter Center. So that's how I started to, that's how I got to know him, which comes to a fateful night in August 2017. So I'm down to see the Carters, and it was an awful day for me because I left Kingston about 4 in the morning. We're about 2 hours or so north of Syracuse, New York. So I had to cross the border and get my flight. The flight was late. Then I got to Atlanta. My rental car wasn't ready. There was this torrential rainstorm and everything, so I got lost. It was just this horrific day. And I was checking in the lobby in this little Quality in Americus, Georgia. And I don't know how we started talking.
Your t-shirt.
What was my t-shirt?
You had the same t-shirt you were wearing yesterday.
Oh, my Jimmy Carter t-shirt. Yeah.
Carter t-shirt.
Yeah. Okay.
And I said, hey, where'd you get that?
Oh, okay.
Because they didn't have any when I was I had gone to the Carter Center earlier that day.
Oh, okay, but you hadn't gone to Main Street yet.
No.
Yeah, okay. And then we just started talking, right? About politics.
Well, I worked at
Right.
Good Housekeeping magazine, and
Yeah.
it had recently been taken over by Canadians. So I think that helped me a little bit.
Yeah.
Give me a little bit of integrity
Yeah.
with art.
They're very polite when they lay you off, the Canadians, right?
That happened later, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we started sort of talking about that, but then as I began telling you why I was there, you began telling me about your project.
Right,
Which
yeah.
you were very immersed in at the time.
Yeah, it was the 150th anniversary of Canada's coming together, right? So I was writing all these letters and all that good stuff, so I told you about all that.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
later you said you had felt perhaps it was fated for you to meet me
Oh, yeah.
because of the letters.
Totally, and this lady is, we started talking in August 2017, and that was what, 8 years, how many years ago was that, 9 years ago, and we're still chatting, and because I find, Laura will get embarrassed here, but the moment I heard about this woman going around America, finishing her father's bucket list, I was like, wow, that's a story. And all over America, and in Canada now too, there's this, I call her the Pied Piper. Okay? And there's little Laura friends in probably 50 states of the Union and a few Canadian provinces, that's for sure. Because once like for my sake, once I heard why she was in Plains, which was to meet a president, right? And that was one of her dad's, and your dad wrote that right around the time of the Carter presidency, did he not?
He did.
Yeah.
My dad wrote his list in 1978, the
Yeah.
year I was born, when he was 29 years old. And actually, the term bucket list didn't exist yet. That would be invented in, gosh, when did the movie come out? Around after 2000, I believe. And it was invented by the screenwriter of the movie The Bucket List, which surprised me. So I always like to tell people that part. So my dad's list was actually a list of life goals, and I think the reason, and I think we've talked about this before, I think the reason he wrote down that he wanted to talk with the president when Jimmy Carter was in office was because I've since learned that there was a time period in 1978 where Jimmy Carter was taking phone calls from regular American citizens.
wow.
It was being fielded through NPR, and I think Walter Cronkite might have been the moderator of it, and it was televised, and he would just, I imagine, be there in his Mr. Rogers cardigan in his fireside chat, and would be answering letters from, I have read a couple of them, I can't remember what they were about, but I think my dad probably saw that on TV and thought, okay, I'd like to talk with the president. Of course, I had to go above and beyond that and actually go and physically meet a president. And like when I learned about this, I thought, oh, he probably thought on the phone or via letter. He didn't mean like in person. But thank goodness I did, because what an amazing experience to get to research. I think one of the best presidents we've ever had, certainly one of the best men to ever hold that office, and to get to meet you, who you know is, I think you're one of, if not the most fascinating friend I have. and that's why we're here tonight, because I've learned so much from Art about the art of writing a letter. And I can't tell you how many doors have been opened in my life, not just with my dad's bucket list, which I think most of the time when I told people that story in a letter, they felt inclined to answer me because they found it fascinating. But also with being an author for the first time, and this is my first book, with becoming someone who could manage to get the level of press that came my way when the book came out, which nobody was expecting, certainly not me.
See, I did.
You did?
Honestly, yeah.
Okay.
I used to be a reporter, and I'm like, it's possible not to write, right? And she would
What'd you
phone
say?
me.
I said I worked in PR.
Ah, okay.
So it made perfect sense.
Right,
Totally.
but when you're, I
Things
mean,
aside.
I'm a journalist too, but when you're the person who's writing it and you're nervous about the quality of your writing, you don't automatically assume, oh, the whole world is going to want to know. And that is what happened. I was talking to people in Brazil and Ireland and Russia, and it was all over. I had a few magazines in Australia who wanted to talk to me, so it was a little overwhelming at the time. But my husband is furrowing his brow. Yes, that did happen. But anyway, yeah. So when that happened, I think probably I would have been more overwhelmed and felt less sure of myself if I hadn't had this experience meeting someone like Art, who had prepared me to understand how to write letters and how to speak to people, you know, at that level. And I could feel a little bit more at ease as I was doing it, because I'd had so much experience doing that up to that point. So I'm very proud to have him here tonight to meet all of you, and I'm hoping that he can kind of take us through a journey of
Letter writing?
Yeah, because you started very young.
Very young. I know the date of the letter, 1975, because I still have the
Wow.
letter, so I'm 9, I guess. Do you want me to tell the story?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so my poor wife's heard this before. But I was watching TV with Mom and Dad, and there was a TV show on, so a documentary about stray dogs in London, England. Okay, and I remember like yesterday, they showed you how they were being euthanized and all that. And I had a dog, and I was furious that they were putting all these dogs down and stuff. And I expressed this to my parents, and my father said, well, just write the Queen, right? And at the time, it seemed really profound, right? And, you know, he probably, you know, had a few scotches or something. Oh, just, you know, shut up, just write the Queen, right? So, you know, how do you write the Queen, right? So I do remember, I can't remember the exact moment, but I do remember where I found her address, which is no internet back then, and I knew she lived at Buckingham Palace, but I didn't know the postal code, right? Or the zip code, I guess you would say. So I found it in a dictionary in the school library, and at the back, they told you how to write the President of the United States and all these, you know, offices around the world, and one of them was Her Majesty the Queen at Buckingham Palace. And I don't remember exactly what I wrote, but I expressed my 9-year-old outrage that, you know, dogs were being killed in London, England. And you're the Queen, my Queen, and she's Queen of Canada as well. Stop it. Right? You know, so I didn't tell my parents or anything. I just addressed an envelope, I guess, and mailed it off from the Canadian Post Office, and I don't know, off it went. And then I don't know. I honestly can't remember. Was it 2 weeks? Was it 4 weeks? Was it a month later? I can't remember. But I came home, and my mom and dad were like, "Oh, you had mail today." And I said, "Oh, you know, what's that?" And one of my parents said, "Well, your friend in England just wrote to you," right? So there was this big package that they were looking at, and they hadn't opened it, which I appreciated. And in our system of government, the king, or the Queen, or now our king is King Charles, is represented in Canada by somebody. It's called the Governor General, and that's the monarch's personal representative in Canada. So there was the envelope. First envelope was from his house, Rideau Hall, it's called, in Ottawa, and a letter from him saying, you know, I've been commanded by Her Majesty to transmit the the enclosed letter from Buckingham Palace, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I remember they called me Master Arthur Milnes, Esquire. It's the only time in my life I ever been called Esquire, right? So it's pretty good. So I opened it up, and there was this very, I have an archival collection of my papers at the University Archives, and that's where it is now. But what I do remember is how adult it was, right? And like I remember reading it, not probably understanding half of it, because they explained that Her Majesty the Queen was the constitutional monarch, and she would inform her ministers of my concerns, but there was actually nothing she personally could do about it or something. So probably I was in high school when I fully understood what the letter meant, but anyway, it was pretty cool. And then, as they say, I wrote on.
What was your second letter? Did it live up to that first one?
I don't remember the second one, to be honest, but particularly in high school, I got really interested in politics, right? And one of my favorite stories takes place when I'm in grade 12, and Canada's Prime Minister from 1968 to 1984 was Pierre Trudeau. Is actually his son Justin just finished up his term as Prime Minister, and I became quite fascinated in Pierre Trudeau and read everything I could about him and all these things. And then that's a true story. He left politics in 1984, and a new leader was chosen by the Liberal Party. And in our system, you don't need to get elected. The party that controls the largest amount of seats in the House of Commons, if they get a new leader, that person becomes Prime Minister. So there was a new leader, and then he called an election 2 months later, and Pierre Trudeau's party got massacred by the Conservatives. So Mr. Trudeau famously didn't talk to the media very much after he left office. But this very smart camera crew from one of our networks got to him while he was walking to his law firm in Montreal one day. And I happened to watch their coverage of it. I was just watching the news. And the reporter said, you know, "Hi, Mr. Trudeau, do you have time for a couple of questions?" And he said that no, I don't talk to the media, anymore. Leave me alone. And then they appealed to his ego, and the reporter, I can't remember the exact words, but the reporter said, "Well, I just wanted to give you a chance, sir, to reply, because all these liberals in Ottawa are saying it was all your fault that they lost, right?" So he stopped. I can see it like yesterday, and he said, "You tell those liberals that if they keep blaming me for what happened, I want to remind them that Gladstone was 82 when he came back for his fourth and final term as Prime Minister of Great Britain, and if they don't shut up, I will do that too," right? So I sat down and I calculated how old I would be when Pierre Trudeau was 82 or 92. I went to the library again, looked up his office address in Montreal, and sent him a letter and said, "Hey, when you're 82, I'm your biggest fan, and when you're 82, I'll be 29 or whatever the heck it was, and I'll put up signs for you in Scarborough." That's where I lived back then. And I mailed it off. So again, I can't tell you how long it was later, but I was having dinner one night with Mom and Dad, and the phone rang. And my mom used to tell this story till the day she died a lot better than I ever could. Okay, so the phone rings. So her 17-year-old son picks it up, and then apparently I jumped up and I started to say, "Yes, sir, no, sir, yes, sir, no, sir." And I hung up the phone, and my mother said, "Who's that?"
Oh my God.
And I said, "Pierre Trudeau." And she said, this part I definitely remember. She looked at me with no hesitation and said, "What have you done?" so then she recovered, and then she said, "What does Mr. Trudeau want?" And I said, "Well, he's inviting me to have coffee with him in Montreal next week," right? And then again, my mother, without hesitation, said, "We have to get you a suit." So, over to the mall we went, and bought me a suit, and I wore it the following week when I walked into Pierre Trudeau's office. And he gave me about an hour, just the two of us, and that's pretty heady stuff when you're 17, And it was one of those times in life I wish I had gone back to my hotel room and immediately wrote everything down. Right? I remember certain parts of it. I remember him telling me that I was probably too young, and maybe I wanted to get more of a career before I got interested in politics and stuff. And I remember that. I remember him talking about the Cold War. I was very inspired by his efforts to cool the nuclear tension, and Canada's not a heavy player like the U.S. was, but it meant a lot to me that our Prime Minister was going around the world trying to cool nuclear tensions. Canada, under his leadership, Canada is the only country in history that voluntarily gave up nuclear weapons. And they've never returned. That was under Mr. Trudeau in 1984. So that's what I remember. And zip ahead in my life, and I'm working for a couple of prime ministers in Canada, and they do that all the time. It's if people could only see this other side of our public figures, right? And they too were ambitious and had, chutzpah, and that starts usually when they're young. So when they see it in young people, they sure respond. And well, that, just imagine what that did to me, right? So so I can tell you some more stories, but I don't want.
Oh no, I mean, I think everybody here wants to hear some more of your stories. I mean, what I keep thinking about, Art, is how when I met you, I already had this feeling that there was something magical about this bucket list, that I wasn't going to fail because my dad's spirit was helping me. And if I didn't know the answer, something would appear, like Art Milnes in a parking lot in Plains, Georgia, and help me figure it out. And if I just believed, if I just kept going, which was unlike other pursuits I had experienced in my life up to that point, because I had many limited ideas about what was possible. So as you start meeting people like Art Milnes, you start recognizing so much in life has to do with your mindset. And if you just believe, anything is possible, then it really is. Lately I've been reading about well, I guess it started this summer. We went to see the latest Mission Impossible, and I went on a Tom Cruise binge, and I came home, but I found out, because he was in the press a lot at the time, and I found out something really fascinating about him, that when he was a young man in Hollywood, he used to just interview people. He would write letters to directors and actors and cameramen and any person he could find who was on a movie set. And he's known anecdotally to be someone who's always on set, even if he's not there that day to be working. But he would just schedule these interviews as an unknown. Nobody knew who he was. And before he did, I guess it would have been The Outsiders and then Risky Business, but he just would pick their brains, and he just wanted a minute of their time, and they would explain to him everything about this industry, which would end up becoming his passion. And I recently had the chance to copy edit an article by the director and producer Judd Apatow, and he did something very similar. I think he has a book out now actually about that. He would, as a college student, he would just call up or write a letter, write an email to his favorite comedians and say, hey, I'm doing interviews, and he would kind of allude to being from a radio station, but he wouldn't quite say what radio station it was, because he wasn't really from a radio station at all. And he would get them to say yes, and then he could go, and he has it all on tape, and he has all these interviews. And I find it's so interesting to be a young person and to be in that position, and just as you said, I think the word you used was chutzpah,
Yeah.
to have enough of that to go and interview your heroes, and look at where it has taken people like Tom Cruise and Judd Apatow. And I wonder if you have any advice on that, because clearly it's taken Art Milnes to some pretty incredible places.
Well, be creative, I learned early on. And I'll tell you another, as you might have guessed, my interests are political, always, right? So, the Prime Minister, one of the Prime Ministers right after Pierre Trudeau was a man named Brian Mulroney. And I wanted to meet him too. I love Prime Ministers. I don't care what party they are. I forgive them if I don't disagree with them. And long ago as a reporter, I declared myself the press secretary to every dead Canadian Prime Minister. So I write about them quite a bit. But I wanted to meet Brian Mulroney. And I wrote him a letter to the Prime Minister's office, and I got a very nice, staff-written, letter back. Well, that bugged me. How dare they? Pierre Trudeau phones me, and Brian Mulroney's sending me form letters. Like that wasn't going to stand. So I happened to hear through somebody that the Prime Minister's executive assistant, his ancestors were the people my high school was named after. So I thought, aha, right? So I wrote to the assistant, not to the Prime Minister, and I said, hi, I'm thrilled to be at David and Mary Thompson Collegiate in Scarborough, Ontario. I think they were just simply wonderful people that I've read about or something. And by the way, I'd like to meet the Prime Minister, right? And same thing, the phone rang a few weeks later, and soon I was sitting down with the Prime Minister. And so
sitting Prime Minister.
The sitting Prime Minister this time, yeah. And knowing I was going to Ottawa, I sent other letters.
How old were you when this happened?
I think grade 12 or
Okay.
13, yeah. And knowing I had this date where I got to meet the Prime Minister, there were a bevy of former Prime Ministers then still around Ottawa. So I wrote letters to them too. And one of them was a man named Joe Clark. And he had not lasted long as Prime Minister of Canada, but had remained in politics after his defeat, and he was Minister of Foreign Affairs to the new Prime Minister, Brian Mulroney. So I thought, wow, I'd like to meet him too, right? So I wrote to him, and I got this, again, it wasn't really a form letter that much, but it said, I'm too busy, here's why. But they made the mistake of saying, if you're ever in Ottawa, let us know. Well, don't say that. Don't say that to me. Right?
So you had a suit.
Oh yeah, by this point, yeah. So off I went to Ottawa, and security wasn't as like it is today. So I just went to his office, right, and with the letter, and I said, "Hi, I'm here," right. And I'll never forget this. It was a woman going, "Yeah, give us your phone number. And I said, well, I'm at a hotel, you know, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I went back to my hotel, and she phoned back, and she said, okay, I've arranged it. And I said, okay, and she said, you're going to go to the Department of Foreign Affairs, which is not on Parliament Hill. You know, it's like the State Department's at a different location than the White House or Capitol Hill. And we have a thing every day in the House of Commons called question period. And before question period, Mr. Clark will be driven in his limousine to Parliament Hill, and you'll go with him. That's not bad when you're, you know, 18 or whatever. So yeah, and then we kept talking. He took me to his office, and then he said, he obviously must have enjoyed whatever we were talking about. I can't remember. I was just in awe. And he said, well, let's keep talking. And I have this luncheon to do, but we'll walk over to the center block of the House of Commons. And I'm eating in the Senate dining room, so I'll walk you to there. So off we go. And yes, he was having lunch with the Prime Minister and the Secretary General of the United Nations. So he took me in to meet the Secretary General of the United Nations too, and I'm like, I'm having a good week, right? That's for sure. And then there was another former Prime Minister there, and I did the same thing, and I got to meet him that week. So you never know what you ask. So,
Well, do you want to tell them the stories about meeting Bill Clinton and George H.W. Bush? Just to shift it over to
to U.S. stuff. Yeah, George Bush is interesting. The father, Alice and I, right after we were married, went on an adventure, and we moved to Canada's Arctic, to the Northwest Territories, and I was appointed editor of this massive, mighty newspaper called the Decho Drum. It was called, and it covered 8 Indigenous communities in this like part of the Northwest Territories, the size of France or something. If you've ever looked at a map, have a look. And I was called editor, which also meant Alice and I delivered it, took every picture, sold ads, and slept there, lived at the newspaper as well, right? So it was quite an adventure. We were there 2 years, in the Northwest Territories 2 years. But anyway, it doesn't, once you get to know me, it doesn't take very long to understand that I like presidents and prime ministers. So I was in this, we were in this little tiny place of 800 people called Fort Simpson. And someone from our head office in the territorial capital, which is called Yellowknife, phoned me and said, hey, I saw George Bush at the airport yesterday, right? And I said, oh, that interests me. What the heck's he doing up here? Well, he went fishing there every summer. This is George Bush Sr.
Was he president at the time?
No, he's a former.
Oh,
He's a
this
former
one,
at
yes.
this time. So I thought, wow, this is pretty cool. So I phoned information in Houston, and I got his office number. And I phoned the office, and I got his fax number. And I didn't ask for an interview, right? So I sat down, and you know, I figured, what's George Bush not done in his life? How many interviews has he done? Like 45,000 of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, I'm in this tiny paper, in this unique part of the world. I really don't care what George Bush thinks about whatever's going on in the world at that point. I want something unique. So I typed him a letter, and I said, you know, Mr. President, I'm an editor of this 800 circulation newspaper, and my boss is very cheap, so I don't have a freelance budget. But I would like
Your
you.
boss is you.
Yeah. No, it wasn't. I had bosses.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah. It wasn't me, because I would have paid him. Not much, $50 or something, but I would have paid him. But so I said, if you write a fishing column about your experiences in Arctic Canada, exclusively, I'll send you a baseball hat from the north and a fishing lure. Right? So I faxed it off, right? And I don't know, a couple of weeks later, I don't know, the fax started, we lived at the newspaper, so the fax started going. And there was this 5-page fax coming out from Kennebunkport. And I was like, oh my God, George Bush did it. And it was full of typos. Right? And, I remember he spelled fisherman wrong. Wisherman, F-U,
Oh.
yeah.
He was writing
well,
Fast and Furious.
He was famous 2-finger typer.
Oh.
Right? And so I'm like, wow, I have a 5-page fishing column from a former president of the United States. Nobody's going to believe this. And I phoned the number on the fax. And then the person answered, said Bush residence or whatever. And I said, hi, can I speak to the president? And this voice said, who's calling? And I said, Arthur Milnes. And then the voice said, oh, the editor in the Arctic. I'll put you right through. So George Bush came on the line, and my new fishing pal George and I edited his piece, and I told him I'd be correcting his spelling mistakes and all that, and then off it went. And
Carter would not have approved.
yeah, but so it made headlines internationally, because nobody could figure out why George Bush was writing for this newspaper in a part of the world nobody's ever heard of, right? And I have my, not like as much as Laura, but I have my, Laura's had 15 minutes of fame. I had about 7, right? Thanks to President Bush. But because one of the wire services kind of changed the story a little bit, and it sounded like I had gone fishing with George H.W., and I was some fishing expert. So I started to get these calls. People wanted to fish with me, and I was, I remember doing a radio show in Seattle and Detroit. It was quite a week. So then zip ahead. But if you want me to keep going?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So zipping ahead, that was 1997. So in 2005, Alice and I went on a holiday, and we didn't have a lot of notice. We just decided at the last minute, and I just punched into, I don't know, Travelocity or something. I was looking for cheap flights from Toronto to somewhere warm, right? So Houston popped up, and it was really cheap. So I booked us a trip to Texas, and there's only one person I know in Texas, and I don't really know him, but I know where he lives. So I let his office know that President Bush's fishing friend would be in town. So at 7:30 in the morning, the first morning we were there, my cell phone went off, and it was President Bush's assistant inviting us over to see him later that morning. So my wife's sleeping, right? And we have about 20 minutes or so before we have to go, and she doesn't know this yet. So, hi Allison, sorry to wake you up, but we're going to meet President Bush in like half an hour. Right? So my marriage survived that. Barely. Yeah, barely. And then, so anyway, we went to see President Bush, and a couple things happened. First, I'll tell you a funny one, is because, we only knew each other through fishing, right? So he just wanted to talk about fishing. So I remember a couple of things. One, he said, oh, my son George just caught this great bass at whatever lake in Texas or something. And he started to, he said, I got this great picture, right? So he was looking on his desk and everything for this bass picture, right? And he gave us files. And he said, it's here somewhere. So we're looking for these dead bass, right? And then all of a sudden he stopped and he said, oh, I can't show you this one, Arthur. And I said, what's that? And he held up a file that said, my funeral. So I'll never forget that. But so anyway, yeah. So I said to him, well, Mr. President, I've always wanted to, and I'm so thrilled you saw us, because I've always wanted to let you know what it was like to be on the receiving end of your column. And I told him a little story. Is the week it came out, this was like, when I say it's isolated, it's where we were living is isolated. And we were in another small town called Fort Liard, Northwest Territories, which was even smaller than where we lived. It was about 220 people in a First Nations community. And I was the reporter in the region, so they were taking me through this traditional Dene fur operation, where they were, had got a government grant or a private sector or something to sell furs out of this little community. And they were taking me through, and they were showing me this, and I was going by this table, and there was all these indigenous women, older women, chewing the hides and stuff, I'm going by, and one woman says to another one, "Who's that guy?" Right? And then as I move along, the other woman says, "He's the guy that caught the big Yankee fish," meaning Bush. So I told this to Bush, right? And he got all serious, and he said, "I want that in my book," right? And I said, "Okay." So he pulled this, he searched around again. I don't know if he found the dead bass or not, but he looked around, and he put this letter up, right? And he said, "Here, take this, because I want that in my book." I said, "Okay." And I remember we finished, and he gave us presidential cufflinks and all that cool stuff. We left, and I said, "Allison, did President George H.W. Bush just ask me to write something for his book?" And she said, "Yeah, I think so." And I said, "Wow." And she says, "Yeah, now you want to go home and do it, right?" And I said, "Yeah, So anyway, long story short. So it was had the post office box address for his daughter, Dora, in Maryland. And, as soon as I got home, I wrote my account of this fishing column and this incident, and I mailed it off. And I didn't hear anything for about a year. And then the book came out. So I was in a bookstore, and I grabbed it. It was called My Father, My President. And I'm in the introduction. I'm like, wow, right? And Doro's writing about her, the family got together, and they just made up a list of all these people around the world.
Oh, wow.
That they, Gorbachev and, Thatcher and all these people that they were going to send a letter to, right? But the first response they got, and she wrote, came from out of this world, which was the Northwest Territories, and it was me, right? And so he gave me a draft that wasn't supposed to go out. They hadn't finished editing it and all that kind of stuff. So therefore, my things arrived. So the Bush family thought I was important, right? So there I am in the forward, and they tell my story inside. And if you go to the index, here's my favorite part. I'm next to missiles. Anyway, sorry, I talked too much.
No.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
everyone is eager to hear even more. Do we want to hear one more story?
Absolutely.
And then we'll do a Q&A. Go ahead, Stephen.
Stephen has
Because this is celebrity and civic minded, can you tell us about your encounters with Dan Aykroyd, who blurbed your book, which I
Yes.
hope everybody buys because it's wonderful?
Yeah.
Well,
And how that ties
Which
into Carter.
Stephen was a big part of.
yeah. Seriously, guys, this
It
book
was his
is.
idea.
Yeah, we're talking during COVID on the Facebook video or whatever. I honestly can't remember.
That was it.
I think
No,
so.
but
yeah.
what did you say? You need to
told
do
me
a
that
book.
Jimmy Carter was responsible for craft beer.
That's it. Yeah,
And I
yeah.
said,
Yes.
and then you told me like 2 other things, and I
Yeah.
said, you must have 100 of those.
Bingo. That's it. Yeah.
And he was
And-
about to turn 98 years old.
Yeah.
So then the idea, 98 Reasons to Thank Jimmy Carter, was born.
So these guys thought, oh, whatever. I won't hear anything back. It's a fun idea. And then what did it take? Like a week.
So
And I-
he came up with those 98 reasons very quickly.
Yeah, it was really quick.
And I'm a copy editor. That's what I do for a living.
Uh-huh.
So I copy edited, and I guess I was your editor.
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
that fair?
yeah.
Yeah. So I got to be the editor
Yeah.
for this journalist who's met all of these incredible people, and Steven is a book designer, so he designed the book and the cover, and we put it out on Amazon. Now, I
Yeah.
mean, it has to have been one of the fastest books to ever be published in history.
Yeah,
It's quick.
and I treasure it. So the day of his 98th birthday, President Carter knew I was working on it, but he wasn't. Poor guy, his mind remained till the end, but his body gave out. So he knew I was working on it, and I sent him the first copy that I had, and I'll treasure it till the day I die. He had his staff send, or his housekeeper send a picture of him holding it on his 98th birthday. Right, so that's that picture I treasure. But Dan Aykroyd. So Dan Aykroyd from Saturday Night Live.
Can I add one thing before you tell
Yeah,
me?
yeah, whatever.
It is, I don't want to interrupt him because it is an amazing
Mhm.
story, but I do want to add, I sent a copy of this book to Jimmy Carter as
Yeah.
well, and it's the same thing. I didn't get a picture, but they sent me a letter within a week thanking me for it.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I thought, wow, he's faster at sending thank you notes than I am.
Oh, yeah.
While he was on hospice, this happened.
It's a staff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, please, go ahead.
Oh, I was, thank you notes, okay? Back to if you come to Canada, okay? If you send a thank you note to a Canadian, they send you a thank you note for the thank you. So, at a certain point in your thank you note chain, you have to be rude to the Canadian, okay? And they won't understand at first, but the thank you chain can go on for decades if you don't shut it down. So I just wanted to throw that
But
in
tell
there.
us about Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah,
his
so-
relationship with Jimmy Carter.
Well, Dan Aykroyd played Jimmy Carter on Saturday Night Live back in the day. There's some great skits on YouTube. Actually, there's a skit where Dan Aykroyd's Jimmy Carter in the Oval Office taking those public phone calls.
Yeah.
that he
Oh, I
did.
haven't
Yeah.
seen that one.
Oh, yeah, it's
Okay.
online. And at
Okay.
one of them, this guy phones in. He's like, yeah, you know, how you doing, Mr. President? You know, I could use your advice on, you know, do I take the purple blotter acid or do I take this?
Maybe that's what my dad saw.
Well, it could be, yeah. And Carter being, you know, Aykroyd played it really well, though Carter saying, well, you know, your high will last 6.2 minutes if you take the purple blotter, but, you know, something like that.
Super detailed.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, Dan lives in Kingston, where I live, Kingston, Ontario. And I don't know him, but we communicate sometimes because he's a political history fanatic. So when, thanks to these two, the book was all ready, I sent him an email and said, will you write a blurb for him? So he did, but earlier, when the Carters were coming to our house, I contacted Mr. Aykroyd and I said, background is, Dan Aykroyd's famous for, he makes Dan Aykroyd wine, red wine, that we all love, and Skullhead vodka. I don't see Skullhead's full of vodka, Dan Aykroyd vodka. Right? Even if you don't like vodka, the bottles are really cool. Right? They're a showstopper at a party or something, right? So I said, look, President and Mrs. Carter are going to be staying with me, and we'll be having dinner that night, or this date. And if you wanted to send some of your wine, I'll serve your wine at dinner.
Was that through his agent, or how did you find that?
Oh, just through, I sent to his email.
You just found his personal email?
Yeah,
on
I have it, but I don't abuse it.
Oh, no, of
Right.
course.
So I didn't hear anything back, and then the day of the visit, there was a bang on the door, and I go out, and there's this guy in a beat up jeans and everything, and this dumpy car in my driveway, and he says, are you Arthur? I said, yeah, and he said, oh, Dan sent me, I've got some stuff for you. I said, oh, okay. And he says, you better come and help me, I can't carry it all myself. Okay. So off we went to the car, and he had sent 2 cases of 12 bottles each of red wine and 2 boxes of 12 40-ounce each of Skullhead vodka for 2 Baptists from Georgia. So I said, okay. So like the Carters didn't start drinking till like they were 75 or something like that, right? Actually, I'm exaggerating, but so anyway, so dinner comes around, and you know, I pour the wine, and I said, Mr. President, you should know that Dan Aykroyd sent the wine in your honor. He lives here in Kingston. And Carter looks down the table, and he says, Dan Aykroyd? I said, yes, Mr. President. And he says, from Saturday Night Live. I said, yes, Mr. President. He said, wow. He picked up his glass, and he said, I have earned this one. As he had.
When I watch those
Yep.
old clips, I love that Aykroyd kept the mustache
Mhm.
while playing Jimmy Carter.
Oh, and it still worked.
And it was still
Yeah,
funny,
yeah.
yeah, it didn't matter.
Yeah, and Jimmy Carter had an incredible sense of humor that you wouldn't think, right? And he had some doozies that but that's my favorite. I have to admit.
Would you mind telling one of my favorite stories about your friendship with Jimmy Carter?
Right.
I I mean, I know this is the letter writing, and if you want to hear more about Jimmy Carter, by the way, we're having a wonderful talk tomorrow morning at the Wellspring Center. I think, is that 11 a.m.?
11 a.m., yes.
Yeah, so maybe we'll get to see you guys again in the morning. But I hope that you can lead us out with the story about when he did come to your house and he saw the letter that you had written to him, because that's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Very, very full circle moment.
Yeah, sorry. Well, a couple quick things. So when they arrived, we took them up to their room, and which was our room. So they had the entire upper floor, and then the Secret Service had the main floor, and Alice and I slept on the floor in the basement. And figured, once in a lifetime thing, we could live with that. And just as a sidebar, 5 in the morning, we heard the tap running, and there's Jimmy Carter, once a farmer, always a farmer, right, up at 5. But anyway, so Allison, and this is when, after they first arrived, they came back downstairs, and Allison and Mrs. Carter went and did whatever ladies do. It's a mystery that men don't understand. And the president and I went down to our basement where our fireplace is. And we walked down and we got to the bottom, and I forgot. I have down there framed the picture he sent me when I was in high school, right? So he zeroed right in, and he said, "What's that?" And I said, "Well, that's you, right? And you mailed that to me in high school, right?" And Mrs. Carter came down the stairs, and he's like a kid. He's like, "Look what I sent Arthur in high school." And it was just really cute. And then another fun thing, those times you wish you had a camera, okay? So I have this bobblehead political bust collection. And I have a Jimmy Carter bobblehead. So Carter sees it, and he goes right over, and he picks it up, and he's holding this bobblehead. And he's going, "That's me." Yes, Mr. President. So he's never seen this bobblehead of Jimmy Carter, and he's fascinated. And I don't have a camera. Just never thought of it, but
I can picture it in my head.
yeah, oh, it was something else. But then the last thing I'll end with that is it was very moving for me because we were sitting around the table, drinking, sitting around the fire, just the 4 of us, drinking wine in a late fall afternoon, and there was no agenda for the conversation, and it's pretty what's the word? Pretty special to sit around your fireplace and talk to your hero about the Camp David Accords and all these. So it meant a lot to me to tell him what my mother had said about him. And at one point, I said, "Mr. President, my mother always said that it was during your time in the White House was the only time in the whole war she felt safe." And that meant a lot to me. And he just did a gentle smile, And then there was silence, and then Mrs. Carter spoke up, and she said, "That's how I felt too, Art." It's one of those special moments frozen in your mind forever.
Well, in response to that, and I think we're going to have a little bit of a Q&A, but I want to add that I really, and I think my husband would agree with me about this, it was when we met you and then got to talk to Jimmy Carter, a few sentences with him, when we posed with him, that I knew that the rest of this list was going to get done. Because that was the most impossible talk with the president, at least I thought so. And then later, Art helped me with the other most impossible item on the list, which was correspond with the Pope.
Yeah. I can tell you a Pope story.
Which I think you might be a little envious of, am I wrong?
Yes, yeah. So when I was a reporter, once a year I wrote to the Pope, and I asked for an interview, and I never got one. But all I knew was that if I didn't send a letter to the Pope every year, I wouldn't get a letter to the Pope. I wouldn't get an interview with the Pope. So.
And thanks to Art taking a look at, what'd you say?
One try.
Thanks to Art taking a look at my letter to Pope Francis, I got a response 6 weeks later.
Yeah, it was like, is that fair or what?
And I think what I'm taking away from this conversation, Art, and thank you for coming to Greensboro, is letter writing to achieve your dreams. You have to be creative and witty and add a little wit to your letters to make them stand out. You have to go to your public library or any library and do your
Yes.
research.
That helps quite a
And do
bit.
all your research on the person you're writing to, so you really know them and know some facts, like you found out about the high school.
Yeah.
And the prime, my minister went, people were named after your high school. And, and I think the other thing is to be persistent when you're writing letters, because you may get a form letter or no, that doesn't mean you still shouldn't write back and
Yeah, don't give
say,
up.
oh, thank you so much for this phone letter, or just show up at their office and said if I was in town, I should show up, here I am. So, yeah.
Also, one more, my favorite tip that you've given me, don't ask for anything.
Right.
Don't ask for
Right.
anything,
Yeah.
yes.
Do we have
That's
any
an
questions?
absolute-
Is that okay to ask?
Yeah, and we'll say goodbye to our Facebook audience,
Oh,
and thank
bye.
you for supporting the Library Foundation, and thank you Scuppernong Books for being here tonight and having books for sale.
It's, Laura